welcome. This is Andrieh Vetemus here, and I'm here with my fine friend and associate and partner in crime some days, Zac and Andrieh. We're going to talk a little bit about the Domagick Challenge, and this is our research report. We're going to try to do videos at least once a week for our research. So we had an interesting ride to even go up to the Domagick.com challenge. Specifically, this is the beginner's mind. And we're starting today because it started the 1st of September and our research didn't go so well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that and what we are going to actually do.
Yeah, fun time, right?
I think we're both at 3 or 4 different ideas. We initially started to research, and it didn't pan out so well for a few of them. We're going to talk a little bit about that to kind of explain. This happens when you're starting out in a paradigm sometimes, or you're trying to actually embrace beginner's mind and move forward. Now, beginner's mind is a term that people throw around a lot, but I'll let Zac explain it a little because it actually comes from Zen.
Right, so the beginner's mind is taking a new paradigm on something you don't know, or if you know something, being able to drop all your associations and go from there. Completely clean slate. And it was very difficult, at least for me, and Andrieh can talk about his experience, but having such a diverse magical background and looking at things and saying, well, what is new to me and what can I explore?
But the topic originally comes from Zen, right?
Well, I would say, yeah, Zen primarily talks about it because it's more about being in the present moment with things. And when you're in the present moment, it assumes you know nothing because all there is that moment. So any stories you have of your past self, future self, or even the sensations you currently feel, they actually don't exist. But because we want to keep the narrative of ourselves, well, that's where we run into lots of trouble. Because in the present moment, you have all the freedoms to be something else. So when the beginner's mind contacts, it's being able to just go in and be present and adapt a new part of you in many ways.
And I think we both had some struggle, not with the classical sense of it, but the challenge was basically to pick up a new paradigm, new technique, just some way to view your magic differently. This is actually pretty critical of an idea to actually do in chaos magic because you get stuck with your magic. And you generally, and this is a psychologically proven fact, will learn faster when you're first starting out. So if you can replicate that mindset, it's a way to actually accelerate learning. Even if you're a veteran in magic, in metaphysics and meditation, you can actually accelerate much faster by taking this mindset of in the present moment, I don't know anything, and just doing it. And it's a way to jump in. Me and Zac, we kind of sat down and chatted about this numerous times. So I think at first I was going to try to do radionics. And for me, that didn't work out. And it wasn't, if you're into radionics, don't take this the wrong way. Everything is so conflicting. And when you talk to people, it turns me off. Like it's really, I mean, there's a lot of occult things when I talk to other people. It actually turns me off it, but that's a whole different conversation, right?
Yes, it is.
But I get turned off because everything's basically an extended sales pitch where somebody who has a machine is trying to sell you that machine via someone else. And it just struck me the wrong way. And when I tried to get down to the fundamentals, I found that I was getting a lot of resistance. Like people didn't care about the fundamentals. They cared about the fundamentals. And this probably will be a project that I try to encapsulate in the book because I did get a lot of resources. It's not like I didn't. And to be quite honest, I took some flack because I got these resources of old books. And, in some cases, it's kind of like, well, first, I can afford it. Second, the questions I have about how this fundamentally works aren't getting answered. Like, they're not covered this. Everyone is focused on the efficacy of the machine, which I'll say a few things right off the bat. My research was pretty extensive, and each machine and the substances they're using in radionics, the substances are what they take the rates of. It is basically should be different for every individual. And when someone comes out with list of rates for what is in the machine, that is sort of like someone producing a book of seals and selling it. You don't know what you're getting, and that's unique to the person. It's worse with sigils because you can encapsulate stuff on the astral side of things, but it really is an individual thing, and they're just kind of fitting an anchor that you've provided to them into what your expectation is. So it's an expectation effect. And the other thing is when I started getting into, well, what are the results people are getting with radionics? And I would have conversations like, well, I use this every day. My life got better. Okay. I'm like, okay, let's go specifically. Well, what do you use it for? To balance my chakras. And then life got better. But the thing is if you actually balance your chakras without the machine in a dedicated fashion, your life will get a whole lot better. Like you'll probably be more successful, right, Zach? I mean,
yeah. Well, I mean, we do enough energy work where we went pretty hardcore on the chakra work for a long time, and we did see improvements pretty fast.
Yeah, so I mean, that is kind of what I would expect from any daily meditation or qigong or chakra work. It's not that I wouldn't expect that. It's just you're using the machine to get the rates and kind of focus on yourself. That isn't to say that the machines don't work. I think there's a lot of very elegant ideas in radionics. They're just not coming to the surface. So I had to dig a lot more. And as it turns out, I'm starting grad school again. So spending a lot of time digging on stuff, can't do it. I don't have the time. I need to have whatever system I'm working on be basically portable, quick, and reliable. As in I can always just keep repeating it and getting better results. That's a hard metric, but it's one. There are a lot of systems that you can do that for 30 days. And when we get to the final solutions we have, you'll see they meet all those requirements. And then I think Zach's will too.
Oh, yeah.
So that was attempt one for me. How about you, Zach? What was attempt one for you?
Well, attempt one for me was actually trying a new Buddhist mantra, which I was like, well, this feels like a cop-out for me because I was going to combine that with actually Qigong paradigms because usually, I've done straight Qigong work. I've also done straight Buddhist work, but I've never really combined it to the level that I was thinking. So I'm like, well, could this be new? And we had that conversation, and both of us kind of knew that was a cop-out.
It was like us trying to justify. We did the Ganesh work on Ganesh's birthday, and we were trying to justify that, and we're like, really, Ganesh work? That isn't something new.
That's not new for us.
Right? No. So that was mutually failed attempt number two when we talked ourselves out of this, and then we talked ourselves out of actually this weird coffee project. Which, by the way, right here, right? Go ahead, Zach. You can show. Right there it is. Right there it is. There's our coffee. Right, which again, we might actually come back to that. Which was basically, we saw this really kind of fluff article about putting different creamers in your coffee, and I said, well, what if we actually went the actual real extra mile and blessed the herbs and put them in? That could be kind of cool and registered results. I don't think I'm certainly sure I haven't done the live things like that kind of magic work for 30 days straight and seeing what the results are. That one is still, that would still be good. But I think we were both concerned that we know too much about conjure work, and this is not too far from the methodologies that we sometimes use with a lot of the fairy stuff. That it often involves ingesting blessed materials, and I think we're both pretty good herbalists. I think Zach might be a little better. I tend to be more of a cyber, or I tend to extrapolate my information and with computers, and so that's the way it is. So that was attempt three that we both talked ourselves out of this, right? So we're actually doing this. So then I needed for my group projects, I was going to do goetic work and summon the spirit. And I was talking to our co-host on the show, Deeper Down the Rabbit Hole, Stephanie Reiser, and we were discussing things. And I said, well, blah, blah, blah. I have this group magic project. So not magic, group projects. And group projects, if you're in grad school, oh, they're just such a nightmare. I just rather get graded for my own efforts, and I understand you got to collaborate and do all this stuff, but it's just a nightmare. I just hate them.
Yeah, it was funny on the timing for that, because I think that was last week. Both of us were like, well, maybe we should just do goetic work. Different spirits.
Maybe we should do goetic work. Maybe we should just do goetic work, right? And I was going to do Astaroth, and I'm going to speak about that for a little. I forgot, who were you going to do again?
I was possibly looking at Dentalian.
Oh, Dentalian, right. So that's the spirit I know well, that I've introduced him to, but I don't think Zach's ever really worked with him.
No. So we were considering that, and then we're like, cop out, maybe, practical, yes.
Well, no, I think it was more than 2 weeks that I actually considered this.
Right.
There's some difficulties with Astaroth being you could call it demon or demoness, depending on which way you want to go, because it can take different forms. And there was some, we won't talk about it, mature operations done with this demon. And I have to say, my group projects are going 1,000% better. That's what I asked for. It's kind of a test that it's really been really good, solid results. And what I was getting through mediumship from the demon, I was kind of like, this is really actually going to be hard. Like, I have to sit down and make something, because Astaroth is a demon of Earth. So she wanted something physical, like portable, that I could then pull out the altar and kind of do some work. But I've noticed that when I get really stressed, doing 30 days of demon work is not exactly the most ideal.
Yeah.
And spirit work every day when you're studying and you're having work issues. I should, as an aside, we should both say the beginner's mind 30-day challenge is in addition to the work we normally magically do. So I don't want it to sound like we're replacing it. Like I wouldn't call it Zazen. I would call it fake Zen every day, where I just focus on the Tantien and let everything go. But Zach said it was that's the Zen. That's the truth of Zen. That's what you should be doing. But I just call it focusing on my Tantien. So
yeah. But it's right in the tradition of it. So
right. So there you go. So ruling out the demon work, because I want to work on the pact elements to decide, and there was a weird issue with, I have a pact with payment, and they're different styles of influence. Mm-hmm. I actually think Astaroth is somewhat of a very dangerous demon, because, when you're actually looking at the grimoires, they talk about the nauseous breath and stuff like that. This makes no sense in the modern age. Like, the reason that the spirit is listed as having a noxious breath is because the breath is intoxicating. I think through the work that I've done, I basically understand what that means. It's because it's an endorphin like the spirit works on the plane of Earth and is highly connected to the endorphin realms, which you'd expect with the love goddess or a love war goddess. But she or he is also very good at getting friends. Well, why do you think so? It's because of the endorphins. Because they can tie directly into your endorphin system and activate it. So I think this noxious breath that people were talking about in the ancient Remorse with Astaroth is basically your endorphins work against you. Now, if some people are doing this kind of work and they're not thinking about it, just do it by the book, don't think about it, people. Those people probably would get in trouble, but it would be because you lose focus when you're starting to get an endorphin rush. Right? So you can't focus on what you're telling the demon anymore. You can't focus on what the instructions are. You can't focus on the ritual because you're in an endorphin rush. And that is what it is. That's what happens if you're not doing the basics of meditation and focus and all the stuff people think isn't that important, but turns out to be. It's the
very important on that.
Yeah, probably the most important stuff. I mean, once you get past it, you realize you can pay attention to what's going on. And that's in my shapeshifting course, too, to pay attention to what's going on to your body, but not let your mind get totally consumed by it, which actually works to slow down the endorphin, but I could tell what was going on. Your brain tends to, and Zach can back me up on this, it tends to look for an explanation to explain what's going on. That it doesn't tend to, for most people, unless you have training, go the opposite way where you have an explanation and you're making your body do something. You have to have pretty good control and mental control for that. But for most people, your body does something and your mind reacts to it. And it's easy when you're dealing with endorphins and feeling really good to say, oh, I feel really good, so I'm going to keep something in the spirit and get obsessed by it. That's getting distracted. That's the noxious breath they're talking about.
Where you get enamored.
What was that?
Where you get enamored by it instead of
you get enamored. Yeah, you get enamored by it, and you're like, oh man, the spirit's so awesome, right? And it is, but you're going to realize it's getting access to your endorphin system, and it's easy to correlate that wrong. Unless you're really analyzing it. Like, it's easy to make false connections unless you're breaking those connections up right as you go through it. So that was what? 4 for me?
4. And then, during this time, I was thinking, well, all right, I was exploring and researching Shinto work more elaborately. I have some background in it, but not as extensive as some of the rituals I was looking into. And it just didn't end up going there. And basically swung back to Buddhism again, but a very different interpretation of Buddhism that I'm very used to. So did some experimental practice on that, and it kind of went in a weird way for me while I was doing the experiments, where just weird manifestations were happening, closer to time magic stuff in many ways. So I was considering it, and I still got to think about this maybe on a future preference point, but eventually, we got to the final
him out of it.
You talked me out of it.
Because I said, wait a minute, Buddhism? That's beginner's mind? How? And he's like, all right, you're right. It's not beginner's mind, really. It's kind of...
It's a different interpretation of Buddhism, which makes me uncomfortable. But the proposition Andrieh gave me, I was like, well, it fits the bill for what I need currently in my life, and it's a new paradigm that I could fully explore more into, which was Fey magic.
Well, not just any Fey magic. You're pretty adept at Fey magic, but...
Right, but city Fey magic particularly.
Right, and working with the Fey while you're still in the city. Now, for people watching and listening, I guarantee you can do this, and I'm sure there'll be some hate mail that says you can't, and you're wrong, and we're right, and it's just Zach has never tried it. And literally when I said it, it was that light bulb moment of... Yes,
I'm doing this.
Yeah, you're right. The reason you can't work with them in the city is because the city is generally banal. Like, that's why you can use art and creativity and all these other things to liven it up.
Mm-hmm.
That unfortunately would not be a beginner's mind thing for me. So, nope, that's not what I'm doing.
Nope, that's not what you're doing.
Nope. Well, and I'm doing two things that are kind of lame actually. So,
In
because I have
combination, great.
combination's okay. So I'm going to do two things for my beginner's mind challenge. One was definitely weird, and I have to describe it a little. And the second for my beginner's mind challenge is just I'm going to be doing qigong every day with my wife, which is actually very, very unusual, and not the over-the-top sexual qigong exercises. We're just going to do qigong together. So I don't want people. We might go to that other direction, and that would be cool, but we're just going to do qigong together. It actually makes a difference when you do qigong with someone else than when you're doing it by yourself.
Yep, it amplifies.
So Zach, you'd agree with me that is actually a beginner's mind if I haven't ever done it. See,
Exactly.
right? And the second thing is that I'm gonna, well, as people, if you've been following me and been listening, know I've lost a lot of weight, and I was doing qigong as part of that. And I still haven't been able to do the two qigongs a day, but I was working through some of the stuff that Mr. Luis sent me, and I've seen this stuff before, but I never really thought about it seriously. So, in the shapeshifting class and some other places, I cover the microcosmic orbit. It's kind of one of the classics. Everyone does it, and it essentially builds yang energy into your system. The idea being that if for martial artists and people who study projective qigong work and stuff like that, is the yin will just balance itself out in your body as you build up yang, and you'll have more energy to act in the world. Is that a good summary?
Yeah, that's a good summary.
But that's not the only microcosmic orbit there are. And I did previously once learn the reverse of the microcosmic orbit. I call it reverse, but it's better to probably call the microcosmic orbit as standardly known as the fire path. The microcosmic orbit, when you reverse it, is the water path. And there's a third path that goes up the center line of the body, but not through the spine. That would be the air path of the microcosmic orbit. These three paths, I mean, I almost want to make fun of it in some ways, because it's, where's the other two elements in traditional Chinese, like everything. But Chinese magic's a lot like chaos magic, where, well,
yeah,
not really. Although somebody might come and show us that there is an actual wood and metal microcosmic orbit. If you have that, me and Zach would love to see it. We didn't find that in our research. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. No, but I imagine if there is one, it's probably got some kind of side-to-side motion for one of those.
Mm-hmm.
Metal splitting.
And earth centering.
And wood might just be focusing on the Dantian, like as a final exercise. There might be someone who messages us watching this and says, you're right on the money. That's just what my intuition says. It would be some sort of side-to-side energy motion, because it's splitting. And on wood would just probably be straight Dantian work. Straight focused Dantian. Just stand there. So I'm going to do those three paths, which is unusual. And I'm a little skeptical, as I am in the most beginner stuff, but I tried it and I was really trippy after about 3 times. And I would just go up the back to the Dantian, then I would go up the front and down the back with the Dantian, and then up through the center line, which isn't quite the energy line that the Kundalini flows through. Kundalini tends to be more in the spine, up the spine.
Yeah.
Or inside the spine. It's more of the spinal nerve. Some people might disagree with me, but that's where I've always felt it. It isn't so much in the bone, it's in that space
in between.
But that's not what this does. It actually comes up in the front through your face and through your organs but it's another upward directing. It's very unusual feeling for that
It
last
is very trippy because I know we were talking about it, and I was like, "Well, I've done this one, so it's not beginner's mind for me on this."
one. It definitely is beginner's mind. Like I have done reverse water,
Hmm.
but not as a continual exercise. I learned that that was something that people thought you would only ever do one time to clear out your blocks and to be able to feel energy, which makes sense. Yeah, and it's
Right.
more receptive, but they either didn't know or didn't explain that you could do this on a regular basis.
Hmm.
And the two together are definitely weird. I have to work out some technical details. So I'll be doing two Qigongs, but this is really new for me, even though I have a good intuition on this. Zach can tell you, we've talked
Yeah,
about this
we've
off
talked about it.
camera. And literally, I was asking all these questions like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like, you're making this up, right? Like, he's like, no, this is an actual energy channel. Although I'm still not sure what the air one does. I know what the water one does, but the air one's a little confusing because it doesn't seem to go on the normal channels that I know. But as Zach was teaching me, telling me, because he's not a doctor in Chinese medicine in Canada, might be considered a Chinese doctor in the United States, is that it is an actual energy channel. It's just in a weird place,
Hmm.
right? Maybe you could
Yep.
talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, it goes into the 8 extraordinary channels, so all of them can be used for like a cosmic orbit in a weird way, which goes into what you're talking about with the wood and metal. But we could definitely play around with it because it's not formally talked about. But we can work that out on the things because when you're saying side to side, I'm thinking, oh yeah, there are a lot of channels that go side to side. So that project for later on.
Yeah, pet project for later on. So the city fairy magic, do you want to say anything about it? I think you've got all the tools you need for that.
Yeah,
It's just you never really thought about it, that you can call them into the city from an extra normal space. Like, yes, they are more prevalent
well,
in the
in
forest,
nature,
in
forest.
nature, but uh, you can make adaptations if your house is properly energized.
Yeah, and I just need to think about it more because we literally came up with that on the fly just before the conversation here. So I'll have to think about it, but I'm totally game for that because it matches
Yeah.
everything for my goals in many ways.
Now, there is probably also natural city spirits per se, but
Hmm.
I might be hesitant depending on the city to call the natural spirits around. It depends.
Right,
I mean, people are kind of nasty, so
they
you can
are.
bet the kind of spirits that might be around are maybe you have to be a little careful. But that doesn't mean you can't work with them. It just, I think, Zach, you know enough to know what is seemingly a fairy spirit and what might be the dead or a demon or something like that. I mean,
Hmm.
it's not like, Zach's an advanced practitioner, basically the fairy shamanism, and he just assumed you could only do it in the forest. And it's fun. It's great
Right.
times. It's just, you could do it in the city. It
Yep.
takes a lot of mindset changes.
Definitely it does. So that'll be a fun one to do.
That's right. And it takes a lot of imbuing of the area that you're in, local area, with less banal stuff, because it's like, isn't so much all the myths of like metal of iron particularly is it drains off their energy, and there is some truth to that, but that, like most things, it's not at all there is to it. It has to do with the magical energies getting drained off. So
Hmm.
if you're in a house that has high levels of magic, they're okay with standing around. Like if you're in New Orleans, you probably could call them to you, even though the city is very cute to death. Um, there's still fairies that are very attracted by death. So
Right, and it's just different types of fairies also on that front.
yeah, yeah. Not every spirit in the city is going to be a fairy, just like not every spirit in a forest is necessarily a fairy kind. But
Hmm.
there are still some that have learned to kind of adapt because, well, nature adapts. It evolves. There is, I mean, I don't, where I used to live in Cleveland, I couldn't go a couple of days without seeing a deer. There hasn't been any deer here where I live now, but man, there's squirrels in my yard. There's bunnies in my yard. We live in the middle of the city. If you look, nature adapts. Spirits adapt.
Yep, they definitely do adapt, even in my area. Like, I know there's a lot of bunnies. I've seen some. Recently, I just saw a skunk, which I was like, huh, that's new.
There's lots of skunks in the city. They've learned to hide from people, though.
Right, and then you got raccoons. So Toronto raccoons. I was listening to a business thing. They were joking. It's like, you want to learn resilience? Talk to or learn from Toronto raccoons. They cost one day $1 billion for the government.
Yep, there you go. There you go. So it's been an interesting research session that we had from radionics through goetic work, which, by the way, that goetic work definitely worked.
Yep.
I could see where the group work that I'm doing would go in way worse directions had I not done that work. And a lot of ideas in the research process, but that is the process, really. Like, you come into it with beginner's mind, you don't know what you're going to do. People struggle with it, and you come up with lots of ideas, and you kind of discount them for one reason or another. And that's not a reason to get discouraged. Just realize that the constraints, like me and Zac have, Zac also has to worry about his clinic, keeping it working in Toronto. So he's got a lot of time constraints.
Yep.
As every entrepreneur does. With me going to school and working and doing side work, I really don't have a lot of time to invest. Like, that isn't like, in radionics, I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to look at it. I'm going to build myself a machine. If you want to send me a machine to test it out, I know enough to test it out. And I know enough to actually be honest about it, what's going on and how the general ideas work. So it's not like we didn't learn stuff. It's just stuff we're kind of like, can I do this for 30 days straight? Not right now. If I already had all the details on the radionics, I could do it. And I think I just got turned off because every person I talked to was just either giving me a hard time about the books, and it was more than one. When I couldn't get the fundamental questions I'd answer, it's like this idea that you would actually spend some money on older books because the newer books are just not making sense. Should make sense to people, but it didn't. And then everyone tried to sell me a machine. And I'm like, okay. Even fundamentally, your books don't agree on the importance of the machine. Mm-hmm. So you're dealing with like levels of fundamentals that are so far apart between people that we might as well call it all chaos magic at that point, because no one's doing the same things. That's not chaos magic is a good term, actually, but there's a lot of paradigms that when you start out, it's going to take more than a month of work because you have to dig deeper and deeper and deeper because it doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think in all the experimentation, all the research we've done, I think those places are definitely things we're going to pick up later on in the future. It's just right now the time is not letting us.
Right, because we don't have the time resources. I'm definitely going to pick up the radionics stuff. I can see some real interesting ideas, especially with, it sounds weird, but with the way radionics does its accounting system to make anchors to substances that you're trying to homeographically or homeopathically vibrate into a person. That's pretty cool. Or spirits you're trying to, that's not in the literature, by the way. The spirit things, I already just made a jump where you can get an anchor and a rate to a spirit and project that vibration over a person. There's all kinds of things you can do when you have an accounting system to make anchors that actually, there's a lot you can do. And it solves all the physical talismans. Remember, for the people who are going to send me hate mail about that particular thing, I pretty well am an expert at conjure, and that's what I'm going to measure against. And conjure works almost every single time. It works very, very well if you're good at conjure. So that's going to be my comparisons. Like Conjure works just a little bit better than Sigil's magic, and that's coming from somebody who wrote Hands-on Chaos Magic, right? Like, so for me, it works a little better if you actually get all the stuff down. And I'm saying, okay, if you're going to tell me I need to spend 5,000 on a machine. And this is part of the problem I think you were facing too, right, Zach?
Yeah.
It's the efficiency. You're going to outlay $5,000-$6,000 for some of this stuff. Then, it takes $5-$10 a ritual for candle spells and for conjure herbs and stuff like that. Maybe $10 at the most. You're talking about You're talking at that point 100 rituals. A machine has to be worth 100 rituals and get the same kind of results. That's a tough sell.
Yeah, especially when everyone has limitations that we talked about previously, where we're looking at things. It's like, well, is this going to be efficient? Because that was one of the things we talked about in the coffee discussions too. Where it's like, what was our limit? $40 or something like that. Where it's like, we're not going to spend a lot of money on this.
Yeah, we were trying to put a limit because all of a sudden you start sitting down and realize 30 days of coffee. If you're not buying the cheap shit, 30 days of coffee is $40.
Mm-hmm.
Like, 1 cup. Even if you're making it's like, and then if you're talking about mixing in, like, at first we went down the path of let's buy a coffee plant and let's grow that in our house and get some grow lights. Well, it was crazy stuff. We're pretty thorough, right? We were thinking, let's do it. And then we're like,
do we have the time?
That's like
no.
$200. Like I could afford that, but do we really have time to grow a coffee plant and do this and then mix in the herbs? Well, yes and no.
Right, and then we were talking about French presses and going hardcore and grinding down the beans. We're like, well, is this different than the conjure? Do we have the time again? No.
No, we're saying no. And trust me, I think Zach will completely agree with me. We're working on that. We're not saying that, we don't have the time and, screw us. I'm in grad school. He's an entrepreneur. We're working on decoupling our hourly wages or hourly stuff from direct work. So it's being worked on a greater metaphysical level. It's kind of like, what do you do right now? And I think that's an important point for everyone watching who's going to watch this later. You do what you can do. Like, I have a family. I have grad school. I have full-time work that is actually sort of being problematic right now. And I'm going to fix that with some work too, magical work too. So, it's a magical 30 isn't about, and the Do Magic Challenge isn't about do something which wrecks different parts of your life. It really is about, well, how can you put these constraints and come up with something that you can do every day because you'll still get the benefits, right? Regardless of whether I do the Qigong or not, I'm still going to do this, focus on my Dantian, which Zach may or may not call, well, this is kind of Zazen work, dude. And I actually do this every day. I'm actually looking for an outdoor blanket so I don't freeze soon because Cleveland's starting to get cold.
As it is in Toronto.
But I want to do it outside, so I want to even get a little mask, like be outside sitting in the chair. Right? I will, too. Yeah, no, I literally, as long as I have a face mask, right, I'll be okay. Yeah, it's got a face mask right now. See, I'll be okay. I'll just wear a ski mask and a face mask, and I'll still try to meditate outside in the middle of winter. I just need a like football blanket or something that you could get, outdoor blanket to throw over myself, and it's a little more sturdy than those emergency blankets that are basically waterproof.
Yeah.
But I'm going to keep doing that because it's really helpful and it really helps me detach from all the stuff. So, and I still do other rituals to basically fix minor issues in my life, like the group project stuff we talked about and other stuff. And so does Zach. So the important thing is don't let these challenges kind of dissuade you. Here we are, the founders of the damn challenge, and we're starting on the 17th. because it took us some time to work it out on what we're doing on the Beginner's Mind Challenge, because we both got busy right at the beginning of the month. And it happens. Life happens, and you just keep going. And that's the point of the challenge. You're like, people have already failed the challenge, and they start again because life happens, and they're trying for a second time to meet the requirement. And that's how magic is, really.
Yep.
Sometimes you just
on that horse.
Get back on that horse, and you keep on keeping on until then there's success, and you've made the alchemy and all their changes, and you just have that fortitude to keep on going. And that is exactly what we're doing here.
Yep. So starting today, we're going to go town on that.
Outdoor, it'll be me doing chill out, and then doing the weird microcosm orbit in multiple places.
Yep.
And you will be calling various fairy things into your abode. Your abode. Which probably would be tough at first until you realize that your house doesn't have that much imbued magic, and then it'll start getting better after you.
Right. I mean, I got my temple space and such, but overall, needs work.
Yeah. Now, when you get really good, you'll be able to go to a mall and screw with people by summoning them into a mall, but then summon them with enough force to actually cause weird oddities to happen, which would be awesome.
Yes. I was already starting to get on the experimental Buddhist work, which I was just like, well, this is kind of trippy already.
Yeah.
So
you can use your body as the actual jump-off point for them to do weird stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If your body has got a lot of chi and is really filled with a lot of magical energy. That's a bad term, but we'll just leave it alone for the purpose of the video.
Mm-hmm.
That is I think, do you have anything to add, Zach? I think that's all I have about all the research follies that we had.
No, that basically summarized everything in the discussion we had. So we're going to get on it, and we'll join everyone else in the challenge.
And we'll try to do a video a week, and then I'll try to do the rest on Tumblr.
Yeah.
About a video a week. So we cover what's going on. And most of that is just to get us back in the saddle of speaking, as opposed to group presentations, as opposed to typing. Where it's a lot of information that I have to cover in the Qigong first set of things. I don't think I could cover it online, but I would need to have slides.
Yeah.
And I'd have to go over kind of why this is actually weird and why no one actually does this, except it's there, but why no one actually usually does this.
Right. It's a very uncommon technique. So
yeah, it's very uncommon. And it like for my stuff, it really has to do with, I hate to say that this is like, because most of the people teaching Qigong are usually also martial artists, that this is a highly masculine type of attitude.
Mm-hmm. I would agree on that.
So, and I have to cover all that. Like, the way you interact with the world from their worldview is so yang that they don't see the value in these other paths.
Right, and those paths get pretty trippy.
They do get very trippy, and I think it's because it's yin, you're receiving more. So receiving everything around more. Yep. So it'll be a fun ride. With that, we will sign on out and wish you all a happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.
We'll get back on next Sunday and talk about our experience and what happened during the week. And the craziness and all that. And it should be a fun time.
Always is.
Always is. This is Andrieh Vinimus and Zach Lee. And this is the Domagick.com challenge. The Beginner's Mind, which started September 1st. But if you haven't started it, you can still start today or tomorrow. We're starting today. You got till the end of September to, you got till the end of September to start. So if the founders are starting the 17th,
You can too.
You can start anytime. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Talk to you later.